Have you ever wondered how to use vectors in C++ but don't know how? Well, you're in luck today, because in this video today we're going to be breaking down and I'm going to be explaining with PowerPoint slides today on how to use vectors in C++. In this video you're going to be able to understand what a vector is, how to declare a vector, how to add elements to a vector, and how we can use specific functions inside the standard template library to get the values of a front of a vector and the last value of a vector as well. And you're also going to be able to understand and learn how to how to add in elements inside a vector today from today's video tutorial. But before we get into the video tutorial of how to implement vectors in C++, I just have one important message for you guys. Are you still struggling learning how to program, but you can't seem to get the fundamentals? Well, it's time to finally change that forever, because if you really want to get guided by me, I can show you how to learn the fundamentals of the C++ programming language. And if you want to get started today, click on the link below to book a free 30-minute call with me, and I'll be able to have a phone call with you and go through the issues that you're having and the problems that you're trying to solve, and I'll be able to help you on the phone call and guide you on the best way to get started on learning the C++ programming language. And if you are still unsure, I still advise you to click on the link below and book that call today, because I'll be able to pinpoint your issues and guide you in the right direction of where you want to go in terms of learning the C++ programming language. Alright, so vectors in C++, let's get into it. So when you hear the keyword vector, what do you think? Do you think of like going back into high school math in the calculus class when you were talking about vectors with the arrows and all that? Or are you thinking about that character, I think it was in that movie Despicable Me, where the character's name was Vector? Whenever I think of vectors, I think of the straight line with the arrow, in my opinion. But what is actually a vector? So vectors are pretty much, in simple terms, they're similar to arrays, but they're also used to store elements which are very similar to arrays. But the only difference between vectors and arrays is that vectors can grow dynamically, whereas arrays have a fixed length. So vectors we can always add elements to a vector which can grow dynamically. So what we can do to declare a vector in C++ and display the index values. So to declare a vector, the first thing that we need to understand is that we need to include the vector header file as I'm showing you here. So after we've declared IOStream, the most important header file of the C++ program, we also need to include vector.h in our C++ programs when we're using vectors. So to declare a vector, it's obviously part of the standard template library. So what we do is we go std, and then we've got two semicolons, and then we've got vector, and then we can have what type it is. So in this basic example here, we've got integers. We're using integers, so we're not using a decimal numbers here, just to make the example easy. And then we've got the variable name here, which I've named values. And then inside the brackets here, we've got the elements inside the vectors. So in this second part here, where so what I'm doing here, where it's kind of similar to arrays, where I'm printing out the index of the vector. So this would print. So since we've got values, which is set to the index of 0, it's going to be printing out 10, and then also for the last part here, it's going to display the value of 30 for this part here. So another thing that we can do, another feature of vectors, is that we can also get the size of a vector. So what we can do is that all we have to do is go, so we originally have our vector declaration here, and then we can also print out the size of the vector here. So what I'm doing here is that all I'm doing is going values, and then I've got dot, and then we're calling the function size, and this will print out the total size of the vector here. So the total amount of elements inside this values vector that we've got declared here. Next thing that we can do is also what we call a capacity function. So what a capacity function does is that the capacity function of a vector, it represents the number of elements that it can hold without needing to allocate additional memory. Because if we have a very large vector and it does go over and it does require a large amount of memory, then that's gonna require more maintenance down the track. And this is important to understand when we're using vectors. So a handy function that we can have here is we can also display the capacity of the vectors here, as I'm showing you in this example here. As I've got here inside this line of capacity after adding the elements here. Which is handy to know, especially when we're working with large data sets of vectors. Next function that we can use in vectors is called the AT function. So this is actually a safer way of actually accessing indexes inside a function. Because an example that we've got here, so if we have an example of an index that doesn't exist, so say for example I want to access, so we've got three value, we've got an index of 3 elements inside this vector here, but in this example here, what I've got is that I'm asking the program to access the elements of index 100, but in this example here we don't actually have an index of 100. So what's going to happen is that the program is going to crash, and it's just going to say we're going to get an error saying that the index is out of bounds. So I can actually show you that in the next slide actually. So this is like an example right here of the program crashing when we're trying to access the index of 100 inside a vector that doesn't exist. It's going to the program's going to crash, and it's going to call a runtime exception that I'm displaying the error message here. Next, we've got the front-back functions. So this is a very basic but handy function that we can use here to quickly get access to like what is the front of a vector and what is the front value of the vector. So the front value of a vector and also the last value of a vector by using the front function here and the back function here, which can access the front element of a vector, and the back function accesses the last element of a vector. And also as well, we can also add elements to a vector. There are 2 ways to go about it. Well, the first way I'm showing you is the pushback function. So what we have here is our vector that has been declared, and also we display also on this line here that says value pushback. So that's adding a new element to the vector there. And so what I'm doing here is that I'm printing out the last element of the vector, and that will display what the latest addition to that vector was, which was 40 in this case. Also, we've also got another function similar to that as well, where we've got the emplace back function. So the difference between this and the previous function of the insert function is that, of the pushback function, sorry, is that the emplace back function is that what it does is that this actually creates an object actually inside the vector. So it's still the same process where we've got the values of the values variable here, and then we've got the dot function operator here of emplace back, and we're adding the value of 40 to it, and then the printout here is going to display the last element of the vector which we added, which was 40 in this case. And then also what we've got here is we're also able to This is also adding elements. And this is just another example here of adding elements to a vector as well, where we're adding elements to the starting of the vector, and we're also adding elements inside the end of a vector, as we can see in the comments, inserting at the beginning and inserting at the end. So that pretty much covers a full guide-like length of introduction to vectors and C++. If this video has helped you out a lot, don't forget to smash that like button down below, and don't forget to click on that red button down below to subscribe to the latest videos of the C++ Better Explained YouTube channel. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.